Something on my mind. American comic book industry, man. It's in an interesting spot, right? Of course, you're going to have all the comic book commentators and creatives and the shield media in which they continue to present this as if nothing's wrong with the comic book industry. In fact, it's never been better, right? Over $2 billion floating around in the comic book industry in 2021, right? The comics are booming. You look at the data a little more closely and you see really for the last decade, sales have been decreasing, right? You look 2016 to 2017, 2018, 2019, and you look at the bottom sales figures, even according to Comic-Con, trust me, I looked. Even before the pandemic, the numbers were going down. Bottom sales figures you saw were higher in previous years because the unit sales are down, right? Aftershock goes out of business, or actually goes bankrupt, IDW. In the last 5 years, has gone down the tank. They sometimes get under $1 in terms of the shares. Creators are griping more than ever and not having been paid. So it's a lot of this stuff of, well, something's wrong. These fools had started taking credit for graphic novels that are being classified, or rather what's being classified as graphic novels, are books with spine, which include books like this, Jujutsu Kaisen, which are outselling these guys. And then they say, well, hey, there you go. It's comics. It's never been better. It's been booming. No, it hasn't. You know it hasn't. Everybody knows. It's just that we want to pretend because, well, you don't want your ideological enemies to be correct. That's what you'd have to prove. No, not prove. You have to admit. Oh, the people that you don't like were right about what the state of the industry. Now, it's a bunch of problems, right? Archaic model, economic model, content's terrible or not good, let's say up to par. And I'm going to explain exactly what the problem is. And what not necessarily the problem. I've done too many videos about that. I'm going to tell you what I think it's missing and what's an identifier and why the industry is the way that it is or how it is. Right? Now, you can argue all you want, what came first, chicken or the egg. But this is what the game's missing. Enthusiasm. Once upon a time, let's say this, you people have going to the comic book shop every Wednesday, just looking forward to collecting, to see what's happening in the story arc, to see what's happening. And I think major, well, the big two especially, they did themselves in. You know, definitely as decades went on, they relied too heavily on reboots, not just of DC. They rebooted the entire universe, but reboots of like series, characters, different versions of them, different timelines, all that sort of stuff. So it makes the events seem it's just a gimmick. Event after event. War of the Realms happened. Right after War of the Realms, you get absolute carnage. So it's event after event after event. So that's part of it. But there's no enthusiasm, right? We hear news. And I think that's why they try the gimmick of like relying on like some of the social stuff, right? I think they think Twitter and TikTok is a bunch of paying customers, which they're not. And if they turn somebody gay, it's this big deal and it'll get all the talk. And that's not real true enthusiasm. See, people are making fun of you. You need to know the difference, Tom Taylor. They're laughing at you. This ain't that they enthusiastic. They ain't talking about it. You don't get money for this whole, well, all publicity is good publicity. No, we saw what happened with that book. It fell off the sales chart. Right? Speaking of sales charts, you know how we know there's no enthusiasm? Another identifier pointing to that, let's say in terms of the lack of enthusiasm. What happened to the sales charts, right? The big two don't even show that. They don't show you numbers. They never really published how much they printed. For the most part anyway, but especially now, right? To get the sales numbers, a lot of people think that, that's just scanned barcodes and stuff. That never had anything to do with that. They're not getting these books. These books have nothing to do with scanned barcodes. Some of them, like I guess with the NBD book scans, yeah, they do. But not with like the sales numbers that Comic-Con and like the combined effort release of 2021, it was a combined effort, but for the most part, it was Comic-Con getting the data, and it was publicly available data from Diamond, making their sales reports public. Publisher sells to Diamond, Diamond sells to you. Bam. And so you get the numbers of what's going to the shops. That's what you got. And there was once upon a time, not that long ago, for a very long time though, Diamond was basically the sole distributor of basically all the guys in mainstream comics, from the major indies to Marvel and DC. Now that recently changed. But Diamond's no longer, as of April of this year, or last year, Diamond does not make their numbers public. Okay? At all. DC and Lunar, Lunar and Penguin Random House, they're now the distributors of the big two. They don't make their sales numbers public. Now, if the industry was doing as good as you guys claim that it would be, those numbers would be public. They wouldn't stop bragging about it. But they're not, and we know why. Nobody actually knows what's going on with this industry. Nobody knows what's selling, so they have to guess, right? That's what basically Comic Con ICV2 is doing nowadays. They have these participating stores, and they're trying to guess and round up numbers as far as to who's selling what, because nobody knows. Not let's say completely accurate. Nobody really knows. We guess. There's not real enthusiasm about it, right? I'm saying true enthusiasm, true people just absolutely stoked for this book, absolutely stoked. Groups, large bodies of people, just stoked to get in on this next book. That's what the game is missing, and that's what it don't have. This is what it does not have. But I will say this, and this ain't to toot my own horn, kind of is, but I'm just giving it to you straight. See, that's what the Rippaverse injected in so many people. Now, I'm not the big two. I'm not. We don't have that rapport. We only put out one book. But I'm using that as an example of people just all around stoked and actually going to purchase the book. What we did was unprecedented, right? Selling that many copies to be not connected to any of these distributors or major companies. That was unprecedented, what we did, right? And those pre-orders, right? Over 60,000 books that was sold. That was insane, and it's still counting. See, that's what the game's missing, the enthusiasm. Now, how you get that enthusiasm? Well, I guess that's what we have to talk about. How do you make something like that happen? How do you convince people to get invested in your project, to get invested in the world, to get invested in your universe? It is that you're building is what needs to happen. But in order to get that, the market has to have its share of correction with its content, with how it does things, how it markets, all of that stuff. That's what the game is missing. Not relying on access media to do a headline. That's not real, true enthusiasm, right? You'll know when it's organic. You'll know when it's grassroots. And until that happens, I'll tell you what. Once that starts happening again, and I don't think. Well, let me make my first point. Once that happens again, you'll know that the American comic book industry has the level of enthusiasm of, let's say, what Japanese are doing in their own country, and especially out in the West right now. Once you start seeing that enthusiasm return, like not just by a couple of individuals or a sock account on Twitter. No, I'm talking about legitimate enthusiasm. Once you see that return, the American comic book industry will return. My guess is this: it's not going to come from the big two, and that's kind of hard to envision. But I don't think it's gonna come from the major indies. I don't think it's gonna come from the IDWs, the Dark Horses, or the Images. I don't think it's gonna come from those guys either. I think those guys will have successes, individual success here and there. But as far as like true enthusiasm, that's gonna come by a new wave, of like a renaissance of just new people, and it might not even be just me. Just me. I'm saying it will be inevitably people that will come by that are new dogs over, let's say, the next 5 years that will see more success than I did with ISOM. I, of course, want to be there, and I'm going to be as competitive as I can. The market needs that level of competition. I'm going to do everything it is that I can. I believe that. But even if it's not me, the industry needs it. Where youngsters are and stoked on it. It's not just, it's like everybody. That's what comics used to be. It's like, it didn't matter. Youngsters to adults, everybody was stoked on it in some way, shape, or form. It's what the game is missing. It doesn't have it because they're not giving you anything to be enthusiastic about. Wherever you're viewing the content, I appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, you may be interested in my comic book company, Rippaverse Comics. Our first book and campaign, ISOM #1, brought in $3.7 million with tens of thousands of satisfied customers. Visit Rippaverse.com to check out our store and stay up to date with the latest campaigns from one of the hottest new comic book companies. Also, my first big step towards a parallel economy was the development of my personal website, ericdjuly.com. This entirely replaced my Patreon. Now, if you enjoy this content, please consider becoming a member over at the website. We have an ever-expanding list of perks for various membership tiers, a forum, and a phone app. Some of these perks will even benefit you if you're fans of the Rippaverse. Anyway, I appreciate you so much for being a supporter and or customer. I even got a little love for my haters.